Hi, back with my dad for another video. Today we're going to focus on kind of taking off from the last video we did and actually kind of get into, I guess, who these rulers are and kind of point out some of the things around the world like symbolism and pointing to how the leaders of the world are the ones putting these symbols up and why. So I guess how you want to start out?
All right, how you guys doing tonight? And I want to thank everybody that's watched our videos so far. I'm not going to go with any comments tonight, but we want to thank one guy. We didn't mention him, and Sean asked me not to mention him by name, but he did get the gospel 100% right, and I wanted to thank him for that. He didn't add anything to it and subtract. He just recognized the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ was sufficient to save us, and I want to thank him for that. But I thought about what we should do. Me and Sean did. We worked together, which is a real blessing, at the same place, and we kind of discussed what we're going to do, and keeping in line with what you guys were talking about. We thought, well, we need to move into what led me to see not just 9/11 and subsequently these. It's been nonstop hoaxes. I mean, it's just getting so bad, and you guys are recognizing these. And man, you guys are really showing me things I would never see, and I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing with the technology you have available. You guys know how to operate better than I do. Appreciate it, but as long as, like we start off to say, we want to offer you hope, but now we're going to get into some things that there's a lot of questions that. A lot of people blame God, or there is no God, atheism, and so on. But what we want to focus on, the people that don't believe in God. We're going to focus on the people that the rulers of the world. What do they believe in, and do we have any evidence that they believe strongly in what they believe in? It's right in front of your face. That's what you find out how the devil operates. It's called concealed, right in front of your face. It's open. But they've taken away the meanings of these symbols and monuments and things like that, statues. They're everywhere.
Yeah, it goes all. I mean, it can go deep. We're going to probably end up making this a two-part video because it can get so in depth. I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, everybody talks about the all-seeing eye and its meaning, and I mean, you can look on the back of your dollar bill, which it's a fact that that's the only money. You think of how many times you've seen the $5 bill change, the $10 bill change, or all these bills change, and we're always getting new prints. But what's the only bill that's never changed on how it's looked? The $1 bill. And why? Look at all the symbolism on it. The pyramids on the back of it, they're God. And these people, atheists, always throw that at it. It's like, look, it said you got on their money. In God you trust. What makes you think they're talking about the same God we are? That's not the God they're talking about. That's where we're going to go with this.
Right, and we really appreciate everybody watching these. And as we go through Scripture, like I said, as my worldview changed, and Sean's has too, we looked at the world one way, but as you look at it through the Bible, God has given us so much information. But we discussed a lot. No one wants to stop their everyday lives to find out what's real and what's not. And that's what I had to do. I had to stop and find out what's going on in the world. And I was just like any other guy. I raised these kids in sports and tried to be as good as Dad. But as things started falling apart, I started looking at why. Especially 9/11. That was didn't want to believe what it was and what it turned out to be. But then, like I said, afterwards, then you start looking at everything, and one thing led to another. And so for about 8 years, I studied constantly about what's going on here, which led me, of course, to the Bible. And then you find out everything's kind of revealed in there, but it takes study. In our church, on the passage we use, that we live by, that the Lord gave us a way to study the Bible. 2 Timothy 2:15, it says, let's read that real quick, and then we're going to move on to some of these things we're talking about tonight. it's a passage that's been, in most perverted versions of the Bible, it will not say this, what I'm going to read. It will say something completely different and mean something totally different. There's only one version or two. The New King James has not perverted this in the King James Authorized Version. But it's 2 Timothy 2:15. And the Lord wants you, He doesn't ever tell you to read the Bible. He doesn't want you to read it. He wants you to study it. He gave us His Word, and we've been blessed to have it. And you find out most people in the world don't even get to read it because it's outlawed. And if you look at 2 Timothy 2:15, it says, "Study to show thyself a workman approved unto God, that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." Now that is the way the Lord, that's His instructions on how to read the Bible. So that's where we base this on. We'll get into that later, but tonight we're going to go back to the Old Testament, what was going on in some of the Bible stories you guys know of. We're going to go to Daniel tonight, where you have Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were tossed into a fire for not worshiping an image. And Nebuchadnezzar built an image of, and I'm going to read this passage. It's in Daniel chapter 3. And Daniel gave this Nebuchadnezzar interpretation of a dream that no one else could. It was given to him by God. So this is a story. Then after that, he was raised up in the high levels, but then Nebuchadnezzar got high on himself and made an image to himself. And this is the image he made. And he said, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. So 80, a score is 20. So you have 80, that's 60. So you have 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. And you only get one dimension, so in Hebrew, that means it's square. So you have 6 by 6 by 60, just to give you a little bit there. So now you have an image of, so if you look on your computer and you type in the image of Nebuchadnezzar, you might get a picture of a golden man. That's not what this is describing. This is describing a spire, or the Bible, it's called an obelisk. That's really what it's describing here. It's a square, and what I want you to make note of is the ratio. You have a 10-to-1 ratio. That's very important in the occultic world, that they use this ratio throughout the world, and we're going to show you some of these images. But they were thrown into the fire. If you know the Bible story, the Lord Himself went in there protecting them. They didn't even smell of smoke on their clothes. It was a great miracle. And so Nebuchadnezzar found out who God was. But the reason, I'm not going to get into that story, I'm concentrating on this image that Nebuchadnezzar said, if anybody didn't worship this image, they would be cast into the fire. And this image is, by the way, the most hated symbol in God's eyes. I'm just throwing that out there. And as we look at this image, just keep what I said in mind. It's the most hated image in God's eyes. And let's look at this image. Sean's going to pull some of these images up. They're all over the world. They're in cemeteries. They're everywhere. And multiple places in the Bible, it describes these images. It's also called the image of a man.
All right. Well, let's
go ahead.
Let's take a look at some.
Let's look at some of these, and then we'll get into them.
Well, we can talk about them as we're looking at them.
Oh, we can?
Yes, we can.
All right.
No.
Okay, we brought this image up here. We're talking about this image of Daniel. And the reason we started with this is the most famous obelisk that we know of in the world in the United States. They're all over the world, but I wanted to point out that 10-to-1 ratio back then. We gave it 1 minute, so we got a 10-to-1 ratio in the Nebuchadnezzar. Interestingly enough, this obelisk here that we have in Washington, remember the most hated sign of God, it is 55.5 feet by 55.5 feet, and it's 555 feet tall. Interestingly enough, you multiply them numbers, 555.5 times 12, you will come up with 666 inches by 666 inches. And if you multiply the height, it's 6,000 660 inches. So our tax dollars, these people that don't believe in God, these people believe very much in what they're doing. This was designed as the same image ratio as we just read in Daniel. It was the image of the most hated. If you go way back, it actually represents Nimrod's male member. So that's what it represents. It goes way back to Babylon. We're going to get into that a little bit. If anybody knows something about that, you'll understand. But we'll try to make this brief. But I want you to understand our tax dollars paid for this most hated image in God's eyes, and we were sold that this was a war memorial. And as we go through these images, you're going to see that they say they're more than war memorials. They're multiple things. All right, we just showed you an image there, and we're going to, this is actually kind of fun, by the way, doing this kind of technology. This is really cool. But in Book of Revelations, a lot of people understand that there's a mark of the beast. And if you go to Revelation 13, I'm going to read a little bit. And it says, and he causes, this is the false prophet, which I believe is the Pope of Rome. This is referring to the false prophet. He causes both great and small, rich and poor, free and bond to receive a mark on their right hand, or excuse me, in their right hand and in their foreheads. We're going to discuss that on you guys that have these other versions of the Bible. Big difference between in and on, okay? And that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you've got multiple variations. You're going to have to take this mark. But look what it says. Here's wisdom. Let him that understandeth count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So there again, we just looked at the Washington Monument. So I'm basically with what we talked about in the last video of rulers of darkness in high places.
Explain what that means. That the number of man, like man, is 6.
Well, the number of man in Hebrew is 6, but that's.
Can I throw in that cool thing you found out about the beats?
Oh, the beats.
Yeah. Everybody wears the beats out there.
We've got some beats. I like the sound of them. The guy was selling some knockoffs, and I bought them, and I bought my son some, and I looked at them. If you clearly look at either side of them, and it's supposed to be a B, but anybody that has any, you look at it, it's a 6. Matter of fact, Sean's probably got his around here and show you. Yeah. But I go, Lord, I know that there's 3 6s here, and it's clear you got one on either ear. Where is the third 6? And then when you put them on, in Hebrew, the number of man is 6. Therein is your 666. So, for whatever reason, mine wouldn't last more than 2 or 3 days at a time. We ended up with these guys right here. So I'm really liking these. These are Sennheiser, not plugging them, but there again, I just prayed, and the Lord answered my prayer very quickly. Where is the number 6? And then He recalled to my mind that the number of man in the Bible in the Hebrew language is 6. So you're completing the third 6 when you put them on. So I think that's why mine kept breaking with that when I know that. So, but okay. But you got there at the Washington Monument. I showed you. Anybody can do a math? I got this calculator on it real quick. You got 5.5 times 12. That's the width, and I'm going to show you this real quick. There's your number. That's the number that are. Now, if anybody believes that was an accident and wasn't engineered evil into our capital, invoking the powers of Satan to bring about this one world government that you guys are warning everybody about, they have been invoking the powers of Satan through many, many means, and we're just going to cover a little bit. One of the reasons God hates that symbol so much, He knew that this symbol will be used in this time we're in now to invoke dark powers. So a lot of people say, you scoff at that, I pray for you. These people spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and they're all over the world in the Capitol buildings. We're going to discuss that. We live in Indiana, so we're going to look at our war memorial we have here in Indiana right now. Sean's going to pull that up. Right, it's our circle, and we don't want to get into the alchemy or the esoteric meanings behind the circle and the starboard. When we go to the Vatican, we'll get into a little bit more about sun god worship there.
Or even the state of Indiana.
Right, all over the state of Indiana. It's. But, by the way, since you brought that up, a lot of people don't know where the word Indiana came from. They think it has something to do with Indians. But if you go back when Paul was in Ephesus, they were worshiping the god of Diana. So if you go read the story of Paul in the book of Acts, when he went there, they had a riot there. They were worshiping Diana and had a riot. So you look at Diana, so you look at Indiana, that's where we got our name, people. You've got a lot of terrible names in this country, the Phoenix, Arizona, in Indiana. Now look at Indianapolis. It literally translates out to the city of Diana. So this worship that we know nothing about because we've been removed from all real understanding of anything. We've just been led astray by idolatry and football and everything else under the sun, away from true knowledge that God gave us. And but I'm seeing a recovering of this knowledge from people like you and on the internet. And God said, and Daniel has written there, said knowledge would be poured out in the last days. Somebody like me that could learn and study with the technology, we would have to go to universities, extreme higher learning centers to get the information that you guys have instantly available. And it's just amazing how God knew that in the time we're in now, there'd be a massive increase of knowledge. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't believe that. They think this knowledge is equivalent to evolution, that we're getting smarter, so therefore we should be going to the transhuman and the post-human world. But that's a whole other tape.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's yeah, Indianapolis. Let's take a look at our monument here. You know, it's another war memorial.
Amen.
To compare it to Washington's memorial, and then let's compare it to Egypt and the obelisk and its meaning. So let's take a look at it.
All right. Well, we're looking at Indianapolis, and these are some of the images of the obelisk that we have downtown. They told us all these years that this is the war memorial. They call it the Sailors and Monument. Sailors and I can't remember, but this is basically honoring the soldiers.
That's what it is, soldiers and sailors.
Soldiers and sailors. So there you can see these images. We're just scrolling through, and we're going to discuss the imagery we see here. But then we're going to go show you what our tax dollars else. This is downtown Indianapolis also. The devil and his guys, horn god Pan, plays his flute right there in Indianapolis, Indiana. We have it here. We just wanted to point out some of the things we have that our tax dollars pay for all over the country, that the people that have been sold the bill of goods of atheism, these people are spending your money paying for these devilish things that we're looking at right now. Okay, we're showing you some things now that what I want to point out also, as you guys in Team Wake 'em Up are out there showing these hoaxes and doing the things you're doing, like I said, I really praise you for that. But for the people out there that are just running around looking at videos, I encourage you, most important, to grab a Bible and prayerfully look into this, because you can be sold a bill of goods all day long. Me and Sean could be selling you something. How would you know if you haven't studied it for yourself? How in the world are you going to know we're telling you the truth? That's where my mind is at. I don't take information. I'll discern what's truth, but I always look at it through here. God's giving us everything that's happening now. We're looking, and we're just looking at some things that the other side does. And we're going to go to look at more in depth of this obelisk, this thing that is prevalent, very, very important in the occultic world. It goes all the way back, like I said, back to Nimrod, way back at the Tower of Babel. That's where this Babylonian system began. It has not gone away.
And on that note, we can do another video on this and point out a few more deals where it's not just this symbol. You talk about Babel, the Tower of Babel. I can show you all over the world just like this where they've built buildings. And actually, if you go back and look at the Indianapolis sundial, is basically what it is, with the obelisk coming out of it, and look, and I just now noticed when I took that picture, if you look at how the city buildings are built around it, it actually does what is depicted as the Tower of Babel and how it's depicted in pictures, because nobody really knows what the Tower of Babel looks like. They've given it an image, and that's how they portray it. But you can find these buildings structured to look like the Tower of Babel all over the world. So it's not just this one. Just like the pyramids. I mean, I just want to point that out.
I'm going to just read a short script. This is Revelation chapter 18. A lot of debate, and I don't claim to know everything about the Bible. Don't get me wrong, especially when you get into a lot of meanings of Revelations, where there's a lot of allegory and there's a lot of direct meaning here. But what you see is a global world government that's being established, that you guys are pointing out. They're doing hoaxes for, we know, to disarm America, to take away our freedoms, to justify a police state. That's just a few things they're doing. But you got here in Revelation 18, it says, "In these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power on the earth, is lighted with his glory, and he crieth mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and hold every foul spirit, cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk," all nations, that's important, all nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication. I'm not going to read all of it, but it talks about the gluttony, the wealth that was made off of this system. He's talking about the Babylonian global government system that's being formed now. It's not here yet totally, but as these elites, we call them, or whatever you want to call them, that are taking the power, they want to eliminate of the people that are of the earth.
And it seems that it's blatantly, it seems like it's coming through the UN, and it seems like that's how it's going to be done. All these nations are being sucked up into this UN, and
that's exactly right. We've lost sovereignty to the United Nations. They are the they are the ruling class now. The United Nations is now usurping our sovereign laws that we have here. That's already been proven. We've got a traitor running the White House, many traitors, because no one's standing in to stop them. Everybody tries to lay this on one man that we call the president, but where's the rest of the Congress? Where's the rest of our government that has the authority to stop this? But they're not. They're standing down. So they're all in on this. So we talked about that a little bit. This global government must come from the top. You can't bring it from the bottom up. It has to come from the top down. And that's what the Lord told us in Psalms 2. We read that last video. But you're seeing a global, a global system. But it's been around for a long time. And I'm just praying. We're going to keep this. We're going over a little bit. And the things we're getting into that take a long time to discuss. But what I want to point out was, we don't want to do your homework for you. We go back to what we read earlier. Is study to show thyself approved, a workman approved unto God. The Lord wants us to dig in there and study. And he also says in Hebrews, he said, the Lord is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. A lot of religions associate that with money. If you go to the context, it means with wisdom and knowledge and understanding. That's all he's ever offered us in this dispensation of grace. He can do whatever he wants, but he wants us to understand and gain knowledge. That's it. We've been granted grace if we put our faith in the gospel, and we can now look at the world and say, well, what's going on? And as you guys see that, and you're going to get more. We talked about that. You're going to get more and more of these hoaxes until they get people to scream that they need the government to take over. And that's what's going to happen. And if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's getting to us that are willing to look at it and see it for what it is, and don't want to block out just how blatant these hoaxes are really getting. I mean, this last supposed school shooting was just, I mean, it's obvious what they are doing. But yeah, here's my dog.
Yeah.
But
Old Zeke.
yeah, I got put him down. But yeah, I mean, anybody can look at that and see that none of this makes sense. I mean, the stories are ridiculous, and the problem is people don't want to think. I mean, at all. They just look at the TV. They accept whatever they're told, and most of the time they're probably not even paying attention longer than to take a glance at the TV and run out the door just to go say, "Hey, did you see this on the news?" People, I mean, it's people's fault for not paying attention, but it's more as everybody's so busy and caught up in their own lives, whether it's they're just trying to go to work and make money, or they have other. Most people will say they just don't care,
right?
To even because it doesn't affect them. Well, until it affects them,
Right.
Then you don't have time to worry about what's going on, because then if it's either affected you by your job, losing your job, you're broke, you're worried about losing your home, you're worried about other stuff, then you're powerless to do anything. Then you're depending on this government for food stamps and everything to take care of you, the ones that put you out there on the street. So you have to start worrying about now while you can. I mean, that's...
Right. You don't want to fall in this. You see the system build up. If anybody's paying statistically to what's going in this country, we have over 50. We've reached a milestone. Over 50% of the people in this country used to be, and we are still industrious people. They've removed our jobs and put people over 50% on some subsidy program. You're seeing a buildup where so many people are now dependent on a government check. And we're going to get into some scripture about that, where God in his earthly kingdom's coming up, he said he would provide for the people that go into this earthly kingdom. But who's becoming the God now, providing for people? The government, the system itself, the Babylonian system. They're trying to be God. Where, you know, if anybody knows the scripture, when he gave the Beatitudes, he said he would provide. Well, now, for us today, the Apostle Paul tells us if a man does not work, a man does not eat. So, that's not a kingdom we're living in. Anybody out there that's not working, you know that you better go get some subsidy. The Lord is not going to provide you anything. You better go do something or you're going to die from starvation. So that's a whole other topic we can get into. But
and you know that's not the system we're living in. When people walk into the stores and you see the person with food stamps from the government walk out with an iPhone 5 and get into their Lexus. I mean, something. It's gotten to that point where
it's crazy. So we're going to pray for you. We just showed you a couple things talking about the governments spending your money, and I hopefully proved to you that you look at that Washington Monument, a lot of engineering went into that, a lot of thought, and I know for a fact we didn't get into the details of what's buried inside there. There's a lot of there's a satanic Bible in there. There's just very evil was put into our Washington Monument, and how terrible that is.
We never didn't got on to the Vatican one.
Right.
And basically all these, all they are is pagan sun worship, and they're basically sundials, along with, I mean, they got multiple meanings, but it all goes to the pagan Baal worship, the whole Babylonian system.
Right. We're going to do a follow-up on this, because I do have to show you the correlation of the Vatican. And anybody can do a little Google search. You pull up the Vatican and you pull up the White House. Just do a little comparison visual. And what you don't have to know all the meanings, the alchemy and the esoteric meanings behind all this. You can just do a visual and say, we had a common designer here. Who is that? Well, that'd be Rome.
All right, there's Washington, the Vatican. You can see about the same structure. Here's the Vatican and Washington flipped. You can see how they're set up the same. So let's leave it at this, and then we'll do a part 2 of this, and then we'll try to move on from there to other stuff. But this is we wanted to tie in this stuff that Team Wake 'em Up's doing, and along with what we're doing. So hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
God bless you guys.